Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Something different on today's edition of Another View on Health, breathwork. Ever heard of it? Breathwork is the use of breath awareness and conscious breathing for healing and growth, personal awakening, and transformation in spirit, mind, and body. In other words, just breathe. That's the title of the book written by our guest today, Dan Brule. Dan will share stories and show us how mastering breathwork can bring us success in life, love, business, and beyond. Cardiologist and co-host Dr. Keith Newby joins me also. So take a deep breath and stay tuned. Another View is next.
Discussing today's topics from an African American perspective, this is Another View.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Want to give a very special congratulations to one of our Another View regulars, Dr. Eric Claville from Hampton University. He is being sworn in as the brand new president of the Newport News NAACP, and their new theme this year is Renewed Vision and Service, the new Newport News NAACP. You know, you all hear Eric on our show with the Claville Report, and we are very proud of him taking on this role as the newly elected president of the Newport News chapter of the NAACP. So congratulations, Eric, and we wish you well. So think about the last time you were upset, anxious, or mad. How did you breathe? Deep or shallow? Did someone say to you, take a deep breath and calm down? Our guest today is the author of a new book entitled Just Breathe, Mastering Breathwork for Success in Life, Love, Business, and Beyond. His name is Dan Brule, and he is joining us by phone. Hi, Dan. How are you?
Very good. Thank you.
Fantastic. And also joining me in the studio is our favorite cardiologist, Dr. Keith Newby. Hey, Keith, how you doing?
All right. And yourself?
You know, and doing just great.
Good.
So, Dan, I've been reading up on this and watching some of your work. So tell us exactly what is breath work.
Well, breath work is the use, making use of breath awareness and conscious breathing for health, for growth, for change. It's intentional breathing, remedial breathing. It's regulating your breath in order to control your physiology, your emotions, and your psychological state.
Mm-hmm. And are you, go ahead.
It's a way to hack into our nervous system.
Pardon me, I just had to sneeze. And as you are talking with us now, are you practicing breath work? Or is this something that you consciously stop to do, in a space and time?
Well, because I practice and teach so much, it's integrated into my life and my everyday. I'm focusing on my breathing when I move. I'm focusing on my breathing when I'm listening to people. I'm focusing on my breath when I'm absorbing information or looking at a sunset. So I kind of got one eye on my breath most of the time, or it comes and goes very often. So I use it deliberately in certain moments, but I've also trained certain breathing responses into my system so that if I begin to get tense, my breath comes in and it vents the tension. If I start to get a bit depressed, the breath comes in and it lifts me up. And so I sort of trained my breath to help me in these ways, and it pretty much happens by itself without me even having to think about it anymore.
Because I noticed when you start to speak in the beginning, you will take a deep breath. I noticed that in a lot of your videos and so forth. Yes, that one.
Yeah, it's a way to drop down into our center. It's a way to let go of anything in the last moment so we're not carrying things forward and projecting things. It's a way to stay present in the moment and stay connected to my energy. And it also keeps me in a beautiful state.
Is there, I was reading through some of the literature, and there's a mention of, I guess they look at this as I'm reading, it says techniques for detoxifying the body and increasing performance. So how, just for me as a quote unquote scientist, How does the break, because I'm sure people are going to ask this question, how does the technique itself detoxify the body? Could you enlighten me a little bit on that?
Well, if we look at how our organism eliminates metabolic waste, only 3% is eliminated through defecation, 7% through urination, and another 20% through perspiration. That leaves 70% of our metabolic waste, which is released how? Through respiration. So the fuller and freer our breathing is, the more the breath, the more the respiratory system can do this natural function of eliminating toxins. The more inhibited the breathing is, either because of psychological tension or physical tension or shallow breathing or inhibited or breath holding, then those toxins build up in our system. So it's just a matter of freeing up our breath, using it more consciously to kind of make better use of this natural thing that's happening anyway. The breathing is detoxifying us moment to moment. When we do it more consciously and when we improve our respiratory capacity, we bump up this natural detoxing phenomenon.
So you talk about, because we all have to breathe. I mean, that's a basic function, and and in the book you talk about the fact that breathing is the only thing that is it's the only system in the body that's both automatic and also under our control. So if it's automatic, why is it necessary for us to control it?
Well, breathing is a behavior. And like any behavior, we take on behaviors consciously and unconsciously. We model other people's behaviors. We pick up habits of other people. And so if you look at breathing as a behavior, you say, if I go into certain breathing patterns in certain moments under stress or when I'm afraid or when I want to be invisible or when someone is upsetting me or when I get uncomfortable, if my breathing clicks into dysfunctional patterns, then it's up to me to restore that natural breathing. Maybe because of postural habits or emotional habits, I don't believe that my voice should be heard, or I don't believe I have good ideas, or I was told not to laugh, or I was told not to cry. And in the process of doing these things, I had to do something to my breathing. So I've kind of laid patterns into my breathing without realizing it. And it's a good idea to go back and look and see if maybe we don't need to free our breathing up in certain moments because it's not serving us. The behaviors, the way that we're breathing in those moments is either serving us or not.
Mm-hmm. So, Dan, how did you get into this work? You're a breath master. You teach all over the world. How did you what was your path into this?
I had kind of a rapturous moment in the first grade in Catholic school when I took on this idea that, God took dust of the earth and breathed into the nostrils of man, and man became a living soul. I mean, when I heard that as a small child for the first time, it was the most exciting thing I'd ever heard. Like, oh my God is breathing into me? Why isn't everyone excited? What's happening here? And I had some good drowning experiences as a child. And when I went to X-ray school in Boston and I learned CPR and I resuscitated someone for the first time, I was totally hooked on the miracle of breathing. That you could come upon somebody who was clinically dead, no pulse and not breathing, and blow into them and they would wake up and blink. I was totally hooked on the magic of breathwork. And you mentioned that it is the only system in the body that is both automatic and under our control. And I go on to say that's not an accident of nature. That's not a coincidence. That's an opportunity. That's an invitation to take part in our own nature, in our own evolution. And it's a key to controlling our body, our mind, our emotions. And so, one thing after another throughout my life just kept bringing me back to the breath. And as an X-ray technician, I had a chance. I was in Boston. A chest X-ray is one of the easiest X-rays to take. And so we, as a students, we were given chest X-rays. They were easy. But when you take a chest X-ray, you have somebody, you take two pictures facing them and sideways, and you tell them, take in a deep breath and hold it, and then click, I would take the picture. And after doing this with 1,000 people, I realized, oh my God, everyone does that in their own unique way. And I started to see that breathing patterns are telling us a lot about a person's relationship to life, relationship to their body. And I just became more and more intrigued until nothing else really interested me.
Well, and I was surprised. I saw the list from Dr. Peter Litchfield in the book, who is the president of the Graduate School of Behavioral Health Sciences Services, and all of the different industries that actually use breath therapy, breath work, in terms of their teachings. So from alternative healthcare, that's not necessarily a surprise. Anger management, athletic coaching, body work, childbirth. We get that one because I remember being taught various ways to breathe through childbirth. Trust me. Chiropractic, corporate training, dentistry, drug abuse prevention, orthodontics, pain management, performing arts, physical therapy, public speaking, stress management. It goes on and on and on. PTSD.
What about
Go ahead.
for certain medical conditions like people with, say, a heart disease or hypertension? Because we get a lot of one thing I have learned over the years is a lot of medical conditions are influenced by stress and other lifestyle, for lack of a better term. And is there how does that play into this? Is there I guess do you discuss or tell people, okay, if you have like say hypertension and get some people that's in high stress environments where there may be corporate type folks or they just live in like high because you're in the medical field as I am, and you know how it is with the stress of day-to-day life in medical professions. It could be challenging. So those that may have medical conditions and are in high stress jobs, is there a role of this in that setting?
Yes. One of the things you mentioned, Dr. Peter Litchfield in that the Graduate School of Behavioral Sciences. The fact is that dysfunctional breathing patterns are often the cause of many other things. If they don't cause them, they at least exacerbate it or worsen it. Mm-hmm. So you go down that whole list of anxiety, high blood pressure, chronic fatigue, attention deficit disorder, pain. That the way we breathe can actually disturb our chemistry and either cause or exacerbate something. So very often, when we don't realize that the problem is dysfunctional breathing and it's going overlooked, the real cause is being overlooked. And so that's why this breathing is related now. And I like to bow to Dr. Peter Litchfield and his faculty because they're all breathing scientists and medical people and with much more credentials in that area than I. But the science keeps piling up that, when you change your breathing pattern, you affect your chemistry. Carbon dioxide is an acid. And so if you let CO2 build up in your system or if you blow off too much CO2, you're affecting the pH balance. And that has a whole cascade of effects when that goes out of whack. So, for example, a very practical thing is called coherent breathing. It's taught by Dr. Richard Brown and Dr. Pat Burbach in their book, Healing Power of Breath. It's also promoted by Dr. David O'Hare in his book, 365 Heart Coherence. And it's called coherent breathing. Mm-hmm. And it's very, very simple. You breathe in for 5 seconds. You breathe out for 5 seconds. In for 5 seconds. Out for 5 seconds. That's a 10-second breathing cycle. And that means we're breathing at a rate of 6 breaths per minute. 6 breaths per minute is a therapeutic zone. After 5 minutes of breathing that way, you have measurable changes in cortisol levels, measurable changes in heart rate and blood pressure, and it's so simple. So it's kind of a direct link when we control our breathing with getting a handle on a lot of things that that are really vital.
440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call to join our conversation. Are you conscious of the way that you breathe? Have you ever thought about breath work? Give us a call and let's talk about it. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. So, Dan, you talk about breath awareness, and then you talk about conscious breathing. So let's go down to the basics. What exactly is breath awareness, and then how does that translate then to conscious breathing?
Right. So I look at breath work as having two aspects, like yin and yang, active and passive aspects. Okay. And breath awareness is the passive aspect. It's mindfulness training. We're talking about meditative awareness. So you don't breathe in any special way. You don't do anything with your breathing. You simply observe your breathing. You sense your breathing. This is meditation. And what we found is that the more meditative awareness you have, the more benefit you get from the breathing exercises and techniques. And so that part of it is conscious breathing. That's where we come in. We do the breathing. Breath awareness, you're just letting the body breathe by itself, and you're witnessing it. You're observing it. You're sensing the breath as it comes in, sensing it as it goes out. You're tuning into the movements of the breath and the sensations of breathing. So you're not really doing the breathing. The body is breathing itself, and you are the witness. You are developing mindfulness. And that has tremendous benefits in and of itself, mindfulness and relaxation and meditative training, right? Mm-hmm. So then conscious breathing is where we come in. We give the breathing a certain pattern. We breathe in a certain way. We regulate the breathing. We control it. We breathe with a certain intention. Now we're the active participant. And so those are the two basic aspects of breath work. Breath awareness, letting the breath breathe us. Conscious breathing, where we take over and we breathe with some intention.
Mm-hmm. And is there a proper way to breathe? In other words, are you supposed to breathe in through your nose and exhale through your mouth? Or because we had a whole discussion in our pre-production meeting about people with allergies, because they all said they can't breathe through their nose. So is there something specific we're supposed to do?
Yeah, well, the nose is meant to breathe through. It has hairs that filter dust. It has mucous membranes that trap microscopic particles. It warms the air or cools the air, prepares it, it conditions it for the lung. It has turbinate structures that spiral the air. Why would nature want the air to spiral? And anyway, so the nose is meant to breathe through, and but there's more creative possibilities when you breathe through your mouth, like a ooh-shaped breath, a ah-shaped breath, or breathing through pursed lips. You know, ah is the sound of letting go. Ooh has a feeling of being charged. And so you can play with the breath when you breathe through your mouth, and you can be creative, let's say. So I teach people to do both, and you need to be comfortable. Some people, as soon as they take a few breaths through their mouth, their throat gets dry, they get uncomfortable. So they need to learn how to relax when they breathe through their mouth.
And what about the difference between your diaphragm and your chest in terms of breathing?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, the diaphragm is the biggest muscle in the body. And so one of the fundamental skills that everybody needs to have is to be able to do diaphragmatic breathing. Sometimes that gets trained out of us through anxiety. We end up being shallow chest breathers, and that's very inefficient. And so if you're a martial artist, if you're a public speaker, if you're an athlete, you're trained to do diaphragmatic breathing. The average person is left to their own just to flop around, stumble around out there. So you mentioned something really important. That's diaphragmatic breathing. Yes, everyone needs to learn it and make sure that that's their default pattern. When you're sitting at rest, the breathing should be low and slow. That's anti-anxiety breathing. That's relaxed breathing. If you're breathing in your chest, and every time you breathe in your chest, you activate those muscles high in your chest, you're actually activating the fight or flight response without realizing it every time you breathe. And you can be keeping yourself in a high anxious state just because of your unconscious breathing patterns. When your unconscious breathing pattern is low, slow, diaphragmatic breathing, you tend to stay in a relaxed and calm and balanced and grounded state.
Okay, so I've been sitting here paying attention to my breathing. It's really interesting. We've got some phone calls to go to. Chris joins us from Norfolk. Hi, Chris. You're on the air. Chris, you're on the air.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
How's everybody?
Okay.
Okay. Look, my question or more concern is when someone is running or they just, for some reason, they had to take out running real fast and real hard, and then they start breathing almost like they're hyperventilating. Is there a proper way you're supposed to breathe in order to get your composure back or whatever? Or, I mean, because like he just been saying something about the diaphragmic breathing from the chest and this. But, well, like I said, basically my question is there a proper way you're supposed to breathe once you've been running real hard?
Okay, Chris, let him answer the question. Thanks so much for the call.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Well, thank
Dan.
you, Chris. Yeah. When you're running, it's a good idea to breathe in through your nose or in through your nose and out through your mouth. Really good idea to do nose breathing as much as you can when you're running, and also pace the breathing to your footsteps. So you might breathe in for 3 steps and breathe out for 4, or breathe in for 2 and out for 4, or breathe in for 4 steps and breathe out for 2. And as you practice and experiment, you find just the right breathing pattern that allows you to keep running. If you get out of balance, you find yourself having to recover while you're trying to continue running, and that's really tough. So you got to experiment, and certainly a good idea to breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth, and experiment with different rhythms and paces in regard to the footsteps, and you just find the sweet spot for yourself, and you find that you can run really well, and when you finish, you don't have this serious recovery. You're not huffing and puffing for 10 minutes. You recover fairly quickly because you kind of kept yourself in a good breathing state while you were running.
Dr. Nebe, I know you do the up and down the steps thing as part of exercise. Is that something that you've been conscious of?
Yeah, I mean, to some degree. I mean, and I was sitting here as I was listening. I guess for me personally, I've always been one to be aware of that breathing, because sometimes if you're not conscious of it, you will sometimes hold your breath when you're doing things, and that's not going to be good because you're going to be building up that carbon dioxide, as he mentioned earlier. So it's really just the issue of just, I guess my question, but he kind of answered it, was, trying to find that rhythm, like how many times should you breathe in? I mean, he mentioned about taking a certain number of steps and then finding a pattern. And I think that consistency of pattern is probably what I think he's referring to, if I'm not mistaken. Let me know, Mr. Brule. I think I'm hearing you saying once you get a pattern, stick to the pattern. Don't deviate from it that much, and you will find that will allow you that opportunity to do that. And I know for the most part I've done that without really thinking about it. But I never really say, okay, I'm going to do 3 steps and then breathe in and breathe out. I've never really thought of it that way, but it makes sense as I'm listening to him talking.
Okay, let's go to Patty in Williamsburg. Hi, Patty. You're on the air.
Thank you for taking my call. I basically want to just say that I'm a firm believer in anything that you can do that helps you to breathe diaphragmatically. I'm a vocal performance coach, but before that, my daughter in 1983 had cancer, and she's well now. But part of her success in dealing with that was I did as much research as I could on breathing and holistic health. Taught her how to do breathing exercises to relax her body. And what we found is that from doing that, particularly before she went to sleep, she didn't have as many severe side effects from throwing up at night, and was able to rest and all. So much to the fact that when she was in college, she called me once and said, "Mom, I've studied all night. Got to take these tests, and I can't go to sleep. Can you talk me through what we used to do when I was a kid?" And so we did. And pretty soon I heard her snoring on the other end of the phone. It is something that you can conquer and that you can take into your own life and make it part. Even for her, she hadn't practiced it in a very long time, but it helped her that many more years, to relax. For myself, I've had some open heart surgery. I can tell you that after recovering from surgery, knowing how to teach voice and breathing, and breathing low rather than high, which would just totally hurt your sternum that's just been cracked. It really helps the relaxation. Could help me deal with all the other stuff that's going on. And then third, just to say that voice students that I've had or people who I'm working with that have to give speeches, to be able to relax ahead of time and be in control of their breathing helps them perform, whether it's giving a speech, talking to people at work, presenting proposals, or performing music. So I applaud you for the work that you're doing, and I intend to get that book.
Thank you, Patty. We really appreciate the call. The book is called Just Breathe, and we appreciate your call. The book is called Just Breathe by Dan Brule, and if you're just joining us, we're talking with Breath Master Dan Brule, author of Just Breathe, Mastering Breathwork for Success in Life, Love, Business, and Beyond, and my co-host on Another View on Health, Dr. Keith Newby. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. So, Dan, can you give us a breath exercise that all of our audience can practice right now? And if you're driving, even if you're driving, make it safe, okay?
Yeah. Yeah, let's start with what nature already teaches us, a sigh of relief. You simply take in a breath that's twice as big as your normal tidal volume, your average breath in and out when you're not thinking about it. You take in a breath that's twice as big, and then you very deliberately give yourself an exaggerated sigh of relief. So we already know how to do that. The idea is to just do it consciously, deliberately. The idea is to give your inhale a little extra stretch. The inhale needs to be a little bit bigger than usual. You want to give that, and we say twice as big. And so you take in a normal inhale, and then you add on top of that a little stretch and expansion, and then you set the exhale loose with an exaggerated sigh of relief. And when you let the breath go, hey, if you're driving, loosen the grip on your steering wheel a little bit, relax your shoulders a little bit, while you're letting the breath out. You're relaxing muscles, and it's just for a moment. You release the breath, and you release any tension that's accumulated. You open and expand. That's the inhale. You relax and let go. It's the exhale. We already know how to do it. Just do it because it feels good and it's good for you.
And to be conscious of it. So we've talked a lot about the physiological benefits to being conscious of your breath, to doing conscious breathing and so forth. But what about psychologically and spiritually? You also mentioned both of those in your book.
Yeah. There's a lot of talk and a lot of understanding now about what's called heart intelligence. So we have mind intelligence, we have body intelligence, we have heart intelligence. And for me, it's not a coincidence that the lungs are wrapped around the heart. And so when we focus on our breathing and we start to expand and relax, we're opening this capacity we have for heart intelligence to connect with other people, to our intuition. And so every psychological state, every emotional state has a corresponding or associated breathing pattern. I mean, this is obvious to us. When we are happy and peaceful and calm, our breathing is a certain way. When we're upset or anxious or afraid, the breathing is very different. And so when our state changes, our breathing changes. And that's the magic of breath work. By changing the way we breathe, we change our state. We can move ourselves from one psychological state to another, of being scattered to being focused. Or we can move our emotional state from one to the other, being tense and anxious to being calm and certain. So very simple stuff, but we have to focus on it and actually do it. Thank God it's so enjoyable and so pleasurable. It doesn't really require a lot of discipline because it feels good to breathe.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
see, the difference is I've listened to your breathing exercise you've done. See, when I used to hear that when I was a kid, that was right before my mom used to whip me. So, so I have some. I said, well, listen, I have bad memories of that. I'm like, oh man, I'm about to get it now. But this is my question would be is this say because I think in the end you have certain people that like the example as a heart specialist, I have this high intensity job where you the day can go either well, rarely goes smoothly, but typically some days are worse than others in terms of just you may have these plans to say, okay, from this time to this time I'm gonna do this, from this time this. And unfortunately, so in heart stuff, it doesn't always work. People are not going to work on that my schedule. So, things happen. So the question would be is, get somebody with a high intensity job. It could be either, medical field, it could be, banking or
Could be
finance, whatever.
radio talk show
Yeah,
host.
yeah. How would what would the recommendations be from somebody such as yourself to somebody who has a high intensity job to get up? Say, like I get up at 5 in the morning or 4:35, depending on the scenario. Should you start this process up when you first get up? You say, okay, I'm gonna do this for X amount of time, and then later on I'm gonna do this. And what is a recommendation for people to say, okay, in the world of breathing appropriately to make your day go the best in the world? How would you advise somebody? What do they do the first time they get up? Is it something that starts immediately, or how does that work?
Yeah, beautiful. Right, you're bringing together the really important points. We need to have a daily ritual. So when you get up in the morning, one of the first things to do is just focus on your breathing and maybe practice either big sighs of relief or yawning, practice coherent breathing, or do what the Navy SEALs do. You practice box breathing. Box breathing is very powerful. Yeah, it's called box breathing, also called square breathing. And the reason it's a box or square is because you inhale for the count of 4, hold for the count of 4, exhale 4, hold 4. In 4, hold 4, out 4, hold 4. So inhale, pause, exhale, pause, and all those inhales and exhales and pauses, they're all of the same length and duration. So
Okay.
if you count seconds, you inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds. So now you've really slowed your breathing down. And you're balancing the sympathetic and parasympathetic branches of the nervous system by equalizing the inhales and exhales. And when you hold the breath, you give yourself a sense of being in control. So all of this has tremendous benefits. And as a cardiac person, we talk about heart rate variability, HRV, and how important that is and what that is, right? Heart rate variability is when we inhale, the heart speeds up. When we exhale, the heart slows down. That's a natural biological phenomenon that's been occurring since the day we were born. When you inhale, you activate the sympathetic branch of the nervous system, the heart speeds up. When you exhale, you activate the parasympathetic branch, and the heart slows down. And when we're under stress, that heart rate variability disappears. And when we're in the zone, we have a very high heart rate variability. The heart really speeds up and really slows down. And that's a sign of, it's a good signal for longevity, overall health. And this coherent breathing that I mentioned, breathing in for 5 and out for 5, that's the quickest and most powerful way to get to increase this heart rate variability. And so a daily ritual, getting up in the morning, breathing coherent breathing or box breathing, and then developing the habit of tuning into your breath and realizing when you're holding your breath or when you're over breathing and getting that back under control. I mean, that's how we stay in the zone. We respond to sudden, emergency, and all of our systems go on. So in those moments, we deliberately regulate our breathing, and that keeps us in this state to be able to perform at a peak level. Hey, if this stuff works for warriors on the battlefield, special forces people, it's going to work in our everyday stuff. It's going to work in the boardroom. It's going to work on the playing field. It's going to work in the office. And I have a friend who's a diamond cutter who's learned how to breathe so that right at that moment, when if one wrong move, and a surgeon the same thing. So your breath has to be supporting you in those moments and not just giving you one more distraction, not tugging on your system at a moment when you need to be 100% available for the task at hand. You don't want to be distracted by feelings of overbreathing or breath holding.
And I know it's going to be a little variable for each person, and this is going to be like for one person it may
very variable for each person.
Yeah, but
right.
if you just give people like a general guide, would you say okay, you get up and do the box breathing? Would you do like say 4 times, 4 runs of box breathing? And I mean, is there any kind of guide you give somebody?
I would use Dr. O'Hare's formula in his book 365. He has a really beautiful, and it's been so many medical, scientific, tests validate it. 5 minutes at a rate of 6 breaths per minute, 3 times a day. So you do your first 5 minutes, inhale 5 seconds, exhale 5 seconds. That's 6 breaths a minute. You do 5 minutes of 6 breaths a minute, 3 times a day. First time when you wake up, second time just before lunch, third time at the end of the day, 4 or 5 o'clock when you're shifting from work zone to family zone. And just that's 15 minutes a day, 5 minutes 3 times a day of that particular pattern of 6 breaths a minute. And amazing and beautiful benefits. And once people experience those benefits, then they can start to play with other breathing exercise and techniques depending on what they want to accomplish and what their goals are and what their issues are. Then they can start to tweak the practice and customize it for themselves.
440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. What questions do you have for Dan Brule about breath mastery? Tommy joins us from Kilmarnock. Hi, Tommy. You're on the air.
Hey, how's it going today?
We're doing great. How you doing?
I'm doing wonderfully.
Good.
I think this is a really interesting topic. It's curious that something we do all day, every day, we don't really ever think about, rarely focus on. So I think it's great that you're talking about it.
Thank you. Do you have a specific question?
Yeah.
Sure. So my question revolves around what I'll, for lack of a better word, what I'll call more extreme breathing techniques. I had a friend recently who told me that he's been practicing, I forget the name of this technique, but it's kind of intense and it involves, rather than changing your physical state, really changing your mental state. And he described it as almost a psychedelic experience, maybe flooding the lungs with extra oxygen or something like that. And I'm wondering if your guest or anyone you've spoken to has tried any of these techniques that can totally take you to a different place and have those really marked effects on how you see the world or how you perceive it.
Okay, Tommy, thanks so much for the call. Dan, you talk about that in your book, a little bit about the change of mindset.
Yeah, we're getting into the juicy stuff. What he's talking about is transformational breathing techniques. It's long been known, in ancient spiritual paths, they all touch on the breath, shamanic states, non-ordinary states of consciousness, ecstatic states. There are breathing patterns that trigger these states. There are breathing patterns associated with these states, and when we practice those breathing patterns, we tend to move into those high, ecstatic, shamanic kind of states. And so extreme breathing is a good way to think about it. Extreme breathing would take two possible directions. Serious hyperventilation, deep, powerful, rapid breathing, which changes your state very quick, and breath holding. I happen to have a very good friend, Stig Sevenson, who holds the world's record for holding his breath underwater, 22 minutes. And we're doing warrior training, and it's interesting that the warrior training has come around to the same training that was being taught by yogis and to yogis as spiritual training. So it's pretty interesting that the same breathing patterns are starting to pop up, and they come from these very different polar opposite schools in some case. So really exciting stuff. When you think about it this way. The natural, normal, physiological breathing pattern is inhale, exhale, pause. Inhale, exhale, pause. So we just took a journey. Inhale, exhale, and then we come home. So nature puts a pause there. And here's a good practice for everybody. That pause needs to become a comfort zone. Many people rush into the next inhale, and they haven't rested. They haven't really sunken into that pause after the exhale. Inhale, exhale, pause. And then you relax into that pause, and you wait for the impulse to breathe in. Don't rush into the next inhale. Don't gasp at the next breath. Those are emergency signals, and you don't want that to be a habit in your system. What you want to be a habit is you inhale, the inhale turns into the exhale, and then there's a pause, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 5 seconds, as long as you can comfortably pause, and then you breathe in, you breathe out, and you pause.
Wow.
So that's nature's way of breathing, so we should just do it consciously. Double down on nature, cooperate with nature. And here's where the transformational breathing stuff comes in. You take away that pause. And now you're breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out. And you're not giving your system a chance to settle and, maintain the status quo. And you start to prompt the system into change and transformation. So a lot of those practices are best done with a guide, with a coach, in a group where you have support.
Yeah.
But the normal breathing pattern, inhale, exhale, pause, just do it consciously, deliberately, and play with those phases. Inhale longer, exhale longer, pause longer. And it's all safe, and anyone can do it. You use comfort as your gauge, and you build your capacities.
Yeah. Dan, let's see if we can get one more call in before we have to run. Ram joins us from Norfolk. Hi, Ram. You're on the air.
Thanks for taking my call.
Uh-huh.
I have been practicing the breathing techniques for the last year or so. I took this happiness program that's given by the Art of Living organization.
Yeah.
So everything that I heard today is we have been practicing it for the last year or so, and it transformed my life. In a big way.
Can you give a very short example of how?
Like usually, personally, I'm a little social. I have social anxiety before, and once I took this course, they taught me how to breathe consciously and how our breath changes depending on the situation we are in. And once I know how to breathe consciously, that helped me immensely to overcome the stressful situations in a day-to-day activities.
Okay.
It's a very good program that I was fortunate to be in. It's a happiness program. I'm sure your speakers might already know about this program.
Yes. Thank you so much for the call, Ram.
Yes.
We appreciate it very much. You're familiar with this happiness program, Dan?
Yeah, the Art of Living people, Rabbi Shekhar, yes, it's beautiful. He's doing what I'm talking about. You take away the pause, you breathe in, you breathe out, you breathe in, you breathe out. It's a connected breathing pattern. It's conscious breathing. And, it has wonderful benefits. It's a perfect example of conscious breathing, continuous breathing, or connected breathing. And they also do visualization, and you're focusing on gratitude, and you're conscious of your heart. So it has emotional benefits, it has physical benefits, it has mental benefits, it has spiritual benefits. And all they're really doing is breathing consciously. It's really magical. Thank you for reminding me. That's a beautiful school of breath.
So, Dan, we only have about 3 minutes left. I want to just ask you very quickly, how do we as Westerners start to accept more of the holistic way of trying to live more healthy? Do you know what I mean? Because a lot of times we as Americans, particularly, we're all about the pill, and so forth. And so, how do we accept this without people thinking, oh, they're just wacky, folks over there doing other things?
The proof is in the pudding. It's impossible to practice. Any breathing exercise. I'm like the Will Rogers of breathing. I've never met a breathing exercise I didn't like, and so. it doesn't. I guess I'm giving away my age anyway with the Rogers reference. But no matter how you breathe, if you are deliberately breathing, if you are taking control of your breathing, if you're breathing consciously, you will produce felt unarguable benefits, and so you'll be motivated. It won't matter if you can prove it. It won't matter what the philosophy is. You practice something, you actually feel the difference. Other people notice the difference in you, and you don't have to be convinced. That's the thing about breathing. We have to practice. It'd be nice if just knowing about it was enough. The philosophy of it was enough. But you have to practice it. But that's why it's so empowering. Because then when you get amazing benefits, you have no one to blame but yourself.
The book is called Just Breathe, Mastering Breathwork for Success in Life, Love, Business, and Beyond. The author is Dan Brule. Dan, thank you so very much for joining us today. We really appreciate learning about breathing, and I'm going to be more conscious of the way that I breathe based on this.
Thank you so much.
All righty. You take care now. And Dr. Newby, what do you think? You're going to be able to kind of talk to some of your patients maybe, or just say to folks, just pay attention to what's going on?
No, I think that, I tell you, I think it will rechannel your thought process. And as I've listened to the show, and I think we as a people could do better with that stress release and trying to find ways of rechanneling our energy in a better and more productive light.
That's what I was thinking too about the stress release.
So I think that really, I'm gonna try this 3 times a day thing and see. I'll let you know next
time. Exactly, absolutely. Thank you so much for being here as always. And
always enjoy it.
And if you have an idea for another View on Health show, we always appreciate hearing from you. Just go to contact@anotherviewradio.org. And we will be right back.
Hello, this is Spike Lee. What's happening? And you listen to Another View.
So those of you who are watching us on computer at anotherviewradio.org, you got a chance to see Keith and I in here jamming to the music. In a matter of weeks, he went from trying not to be noticed to taking center stage on a nationally syndicated television show. His name is William Williams, and the Granby High School sophomore recently shared with our Lisa Godley how he's used life's hard knocks to bang out a bright future.
My dream is I want to become president in 2036, which is when I turn 35.
What made you decide I want to be president of the United States?
Well, I've always had an interest into politics. And I find that one of the greatest ways to change someone's life is in the seat of the presidency. And I think that being in that position, I'm able to help people a lot more than I would in other positions.
There's no doubt that William Williams dreams big. If you don't believe me, ask comedian, author, and show host Steve Harvey.
William clearly has the drive and determination to fulfill all his dreams. And in honor of it being the 10th Annual Dreamers Academy, I wanted to be sure that it gets even closer to making those dreams a reality. That's why we're giving you today a check for $10,000. Are you for real? Yeah, man.
Williams' connection to Harvey started a little over a month ago when he was selected to participate in the 4-day Disney Dreamers Academy, a program designed to unlock the potential in young people by connecting them with inspirational leaders who teach them how to set goals, make plans, and dream big. Event coordinators had seen a video of William doing spoken word and asked him if he would do it there. So the Granby High School honors student looked deep into himself and within a couple of hours captivated the other 99 dreamers with a performance that started like this.
I am an African American, albino. To this truth I must confess. Ever since the day of my birth, the term moonshine has been branded on my chest, and you just can't know the pain of being a little black kid with skin like snow, like every day The kids in school would alienate me, make me look like I was nothing more than a worthless human being until they had convinced me that my albinism was a blight, that because of this complexion, I couldn't be black, I was just an off-white. Tearing through my self-esteem like it was air, like it was nothing, white boy. They would call out in the hallways as they walked past me. Snowflake is how they called out to me when they caught me outside, and white chocolate is how they defined me every time when I stepped within their vicinity.
I asked William why he decided to share his story.
I think the best way of showing everybody how to accept themselves is to tell my story of me not accepting myself, being bullied as a kid because of my albinism and being looked at as different, letting myself get into a state of depression and finding ways coming out of that.
When I was 9, I'd already tried to myself 5 times. And all I have to say to all those kids that dragged me through the dirt, made me feel like mud, is thank you.
By the end of his 5-minute performance, the Granby High School sophomore had the room on its feet as he thanked his bullies.
So thank you for telling me that I was a snowflake so that I can show you how unique I truly am. So thank you.
As I mentioned earlier, Steve Harvey was so impressed that he invited William to be a guest on his television show. And from that point on, things just kept getting better.
We're going to take this $10,000. We're going to give it to your mom so y'all can get a place to stay. And we take $10,000, do that, and then I'm going to take my foundation. I'm going to send you to college.
William says he's thinking Brown or Georgetown. But for now, William is prepping for the International Poetry Slam in San Francisco. What an amazing last few weeks for William Williams. For Another View, I'm Lisa Godley.
Wow. When I heard that story the first time, I actually burst into tears. And it's got me choked up a little bit right now. But William's next project is to create a public speaking club in hopes of building strong oratorical skills and confidence in those who need it most. What a remarkable, remarkable young man. Thank you so much for joining us today for Another View. If you'd like to hear the show again or share it with a friend, please visit our website, anotherviewradio.org, and download the podcast. And while you're there, please sign up for our eView newsletter. It's a once-a-week reminder of upcoming shows. We're on Facebook, so like us, and I'm on Twitter at Barbara Ham Lee. Next time on Another View, our financial health. Are you in good shape or critical condition? Financial coach Christy Hunt joins us with ways to get on good financial footing. Our theme music was composed and performed by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Victor Bowen is our audio engineer, and Jada Baden answered our phones. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Thank you so very, very much for listening to Another View.